They said it couldn't be done. They said a YouTube star and a Scottish warrior could never coexist long enough to defeat the greatest tag team of this generation. They said the Usos, the Bloodline's most lethal weapons, would tear through Logan Paul and Drew McIntyre like tissue paper and walk into WarGames with all the momentum in the world. They were wrong. What you're about to witness is the story of how two men who have nothing in common, who shouldn't even be able to stand in the same room without wanting to rip each other's heads off, somehow found a way to pull off the impossible and shock the entire wrestling world in the process. This isn't just about a tag team victory. This isn't just about getting an advantage going into WarGames. This is about defying expectations. This is about two alphas putting their egos aside for one night to achieve something nobody believed they could do. This is about the Usos, the most decorated tag team in WWE history, getting a taste of their own medicine and realizing that their reign of dominance might be coming to a brutal end. And when that final 3-count hit, when Logan Paul and Drew McIntyre stood tall with their arms raised while the Usos lay broken and defeated in the ring, the entire landscape of WarGames changed forever. So strap in. Because what happened on Raw wasn't just a match. It was a statement. A declaration. A warning shot fired directly at the heart of everything the Bloodline has built. And by the time we're done here, you're going to understand exactly why this victory might be the beginning of the end for the most dominant faction in modern wrestling history. Let's set the stage, because context is everything. WarGames. The most brutal match concept in professional wrestling. 2 rings. 1 massive steel cage surrounding both. Teams of 4 battling in absolute chaos with nowhere to run and nowhere to hide. And the advantage match? That's the golden ticket. Win the advantage match, and your team gets to send in an extra member at the start, giving you a crucial numbers advantage that can determine the entire outcome of WarGames. The stakes couldn't be higher. The pressure couldn't be more intense. On one side, you have the Usos, Uso and Jimmy Uso, the twin brothers who have dominated the tag team division for years. The men who held the undisputed tag team championships for what felt like an eternity. The enforcers of the Bloodline who have destroyed every team put in front of them. These aren't just any tag team's wrestlers. These are brothers. They've been teaming together since before most of the current roster even laced up their boots. They know each other's movements instinctively. They finish each other's sentences in the ring. They're synchronized destruction. And they were confident. You could see it in their swagger. You could hear it in their promos. The Usos walked into this advantage match believing that victory was a formality. That Logan Paul, the outsider, the celebrity, the guy who only shows up when it's convenient, and Drew McIntyre, the lone wolf who trusts nobody, could never function as a cohesive unit. The Usos believed they had already won before the bell even rang. But on the other side of the ring stood 2 men who were about to prove that sometimes, the impossible becomes possible when the stakes are high enough. Logan Paul. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. The YouTube star. The influencer. The guy who doesn't belong in professional wrestling according to the gatekeepers and purists who think you need to spend 20 years in bingo halls before you're allowed to step into a WWE ring. But here's what those critics conveniently ignore: Logan Paul is a natural. An absolute freak athlete who took to professional wrestling like he was born for it. The man's 3rd ever match was against Roman Reigns at the biggest stadium show of the year, and he didn't just survive, he competed. Logan brings something to WWE that nobody else can: mainstream attention. Millions of eyes from outside the wrestling bubble. The ability to make casual fans tune in just to see what this YouTube guy is going to do next. But more than that, Logan brings legitimacy between those ropes. The athleticism is real. The timing is real. The willingness to put his body on the line is real. When Logan hits a frog splash, it's picture perfect. When he takes a bump, he takes it like someone who understands the craft. When he sells, he makes you believe. Still, there's always been a question mark. Can Logan exist in a tag team environment? Can he trust a partner? Can he put aside his ego and work as part of a unit rather than being the solo star of his own highlight reel? Enter Drew McIntyre, the Scottish psychopath. The Claymore-kicking, sword-wielding destroyer who has been on a mission to prove he's the rightful top guy in WWE. A man who was released, rebuilt himself on the independent scene, came back to WWE, and clawed his way to the top through sheer force of will. Drew McIntyre doesn't need a partner. Drew McIntyre doesn't want a partner. He spent his entire career proving that he works best alone, that he's the kind of warrior who walks into battle solo and emerges victorious through pure violence and determination. Pairing Drew with Logan Paul wasn't just unlikely, it was volatile. These 2 men exist in completely different worlds. They have different motivations, different backgrounds, different philosophies about what wrestling should be. And the Usos? The Usos were counting on that dysfunction to be their ticket to victory. The match started exactly how everyone expected it to: chaos. The Usos came out aggressive, targeting Logan Paul immediately because they knew he was the weak link. The celebrity. The outsider. The guy who would crack under pressure when the going got tough. They isolated Logan in their corner, cutting off the ring, using all those beautiful tag team mechanics that have made them legends. Quick tags. Frequent fresh man. Relentless offense that doesn't give the opponent a second to breathe. And Logan? He was taking a beating. The Usos were working him over, targeting his ribs, his back, testing his resolve with every strike and suplex and Samoan drop. The crowd could feel it. This was going exactly according to the Usos' plan. Break down Logan Paul. Make him regret stepping into the ring with real tag team specialists. Then finish him off and walk out with the WarGames Advantage. But here's what the Usos forgot: Logan Paul didn't become a global superstar by quitting. He didn't build an empire by folding under pressure. And he didn't walk into WWE without understanding that he would be tested at every single opportunity. Logan fought. He absorbed punishment that would have broken lesser men. He kicked out of pin attempts when the logical thing would have been to just stay down. He kept reaching for that corner, crawling inch by agonizing inch toward Drew McIntyre, who was screaming for the tag. And when Logan finally made that hot tag when he lunged across the ring and slapped Drew's hand, the entire arena erupted. Quick question: did you expect Logan Paul to show this much heart, or did you think he'd fold under pressure? Drop your honest take in the comments. Drew McIntyre entered that ring like a force of nature. Clotheslines that turned the Usos inside out. Overhead belly-to-belly suplexes that launched them halfway across the ring. The kind of raw power that reminds you why Drew has been a world champion and why he's one of the most physically dominant performers in WWE history. The Usos tried to use their numbers advantage. Tried to double team. Tried to use the tactics that have worked against every other team they've faced. But Drew is not every other wrestler. Drew is a 6'5" wrecking machine who spent years perfecting his craft in the hardest wrestling environments on the planet. When the Usos came at him together, Drew fought them both off, his eyes wild with that controlled fury that makes him so dangerous. And then this is where it gets interesting: Drew didn't try to finish the match alone. He could have. His ego was screaming at him to hit the Claymore and get the pinfall himself, to prove he didn't need Logan Paul's help, to show the world that Drew McIntyre is still the alpha predator of WWE. But he didn't. Instead, Drew set up one of the Usos for Logan's finish. He trusted his partner in that moment. He put the team before his own pride. And Logan? Logan capitalized. He hit his signature frog splash perfect form, devastating impact, and went for the cover. But the Usos aren't called the greatest tag team of this generation for nothing. They survived. They kicked out. They regrouped. And they launched a counteroffensive that reminded everyone watching why they've held gold for so long. The match descended into beautiful chaos. All four men giving everything they had. Near falls that had the crowd on their feet. False finishes that made you think the match was over before another dramatic kickout. This wasn't just a tag team match. This was a war. A statement. A battle between two teams with everything to lose. Let's talk about the turning point. The moment when everything changed. The Usos had Drew isolated. They hit a devastating tandem maneuver, one that has finished countless teams before. Jimmy went for the pin while G prevented Logan from making the save. 1, 2, THR. Drew kicked out. The look on the Usos' faces said everything. Shock. Frustration. The dawning realization that maybe, just maybe, they had underestimated their opponents. And that's when Logan Paul did something incredible. He didn't just break up the pin. He hit a suicide dive through the ropes that took out Uso on the outside. The impact was sickening. Both men crashed into the barricade in a heap of tangled limbs and shattered dreams. Inside the ring, Drew was stirring, getting to his feet, measuring up Jimmy Uso for the Claymore kick. Jimmy saw it coming. He ducked. He tried to counter with a super kick, the Usos' signature move that has won them hundreds of matches. But Drew caught his foot, pulled Jimmy in. Glasgow kiss, a brutal headbutt that left Jimmy dazed. And then Claymore kick. Drew's boot connected with Jimmy's jaw with the sound of thunder. Jimmy crumpled to the mat like someone had just cut his strings. But here's where it gets beautiful from a storytelling perspective. Drew didn't go for the pin. He could have. He should have. His finisher had just knocked Jimmy into next week. But Drew looked to the corner where Logan was climbing back to the apron, and something passed between them. An understanding. A moment of mutual respect. Drew tagged Logan in. He gave his partner the moment. The opportunity to be the one to secure the victory. The chance to prove that he belongs. Logan scaled the turnbuckle. The crowd was on their feet. Jimmy Uso was still down from the Claymore. Everything was set up perfectly. Real talk, would you have given your partner the pin, or would you have taken the glory for yourself? Answer honestly below. Frog splash. Logan crashed down with maximum impact, his body weight crushing Jimmy Uso against the canvas. The referee's hand hit the mat. Once, twice, 3 times. And then the arena exploded. Logan Paul and Drew McIntyre had done the impossible. They had defeated the Usos in the WarGames Advantage Match. They had earned their team the crucial numbers advantage going into the most brutal match in professional wrestling. But more than that, they had proven that two men who have nothing in common can find a way to coexist when the stakes are high enough, when the goal is important enough, when winning matters more than ego. The celebration was electric. Drew and Logan stood in the center of the ring, arms raised, their faces showing a mixture of triumph and genuine surprise at what they had just accomplished. The Usos rolled out of the ring in disbelief. These men who had been untouchable for so long had just been defeated by a makeshift team that shouldn't have worked. The shock on their faces was priceless. And somewhere backstage, Roman Reigns was watching. The tribal chief was seeing his most trusted enforcers get beaten. He was witnessing the first cracks in the Bloodline's armor. He was realizing that War Games just got a lot more complicated. But let's zoom out and talk about what this really means. Because this wasn't just a match. This was a paradigm shift. The Usos have been the standard bearers for tag team wrestling in WWE. They've made careers out of being unbeatable. They've crushed team after team after team, establishing the Bloodline's dominance across every division. And they just lost to Logan Paul, a part-timer who many still consider an outsider, and Drew McIntyre, a single star who had never shown any ability to function as part of a tag team. Think about the implications. If the Usos can be beaten by a thrown-together team with minimal chemistry, what does that say about their mystique? What does that say about the Bloodline's supposed invincibility? The aura is broken. The illusion has been shattered. And going into War Games with the numbers disadvantage? That's a recipe for disaster for the Bloodline's team. They'll start the match down a man. They'll be fighting from behind from the opening bell. They'll have to claw and scratch and survive until their team is at full strength. Meanwhile, Logan and Drew's team? They get to set the tone. They get to establish dominance. They get to brutalize their opponents before the teams are even equal. That advantage could be the difference between victory